go to ravepubs.com/InfoComm for all your InfoComm news.
Hey, this is Gary Kay. We are at InfoComm 2026, obviously in the Visionary booth, and I'm getting to sit down for the first time all day. And Jordan Christoff's the one that convinced me to do this, co-founder of Visionary. And Jordan, I want to ask you about your new We-Cosystem, right? nexAV We-Cosystem. First off, 20,000 foot view. What is it?
It's the idea that integrators and end users should not be as dependent upon manufacturers as they have been in the past, especially I think for kind of the central items of control and UIs.
Yeah, and obviously your sort of, where you guys came from is you kind of invented the AV over IP space. I mean, the first place I saw an actual AV over IP encoder and decoder pairing work was in your booth, I think at CEDIA maybe years and years ago, or what, I don't remember what show it was. And so obviously I'm guessing it has something to do with AV over IP.
Well, that's part of it. So
yeah,
we had our first endpoint in 2002.
Yeah.
Got to give a shout out to vBrick. They actually had the first a long time ago, but they've been through a lot of transitions. But the idea is, yes, it's AV over IP, it's IPTV, it's digital signage, but it's all the pieces of what does it take for an integrator, and more importantly, at the end of the day, the end user, to have a system where there's interoperability, but flexibility, especially with the control and how they present the UI to the user.
All right, so give me an example of interoperability, because obviously with most of the leading AV over IP systems, including yours, it has historically been a kind of lockdown ecosystem that you've created yourself. So give me an example of interoperability in that respect.
Sure, what we're really at here is interoperability of control and API. Mm-hmm. So there's still proprietary formats for the transport layer, mm-hmm, although pretty much we all share Dante and AES67 for the audio now, so that is truly interoperable. But really it's the idea that you should be able to use like an RDL point with it, or a Netgear, or our stuff, or all kinds of different manufacturers, and to be able to use that stuff all together and command and control it from something that is not changing
customizable.
Yeah, well, and more importantly, kind of the motto of this in a way is don't let your control system control you. Right, so we're using open source from Node-RED, which I wanted to do about 6 years ago, and people were kind of laughing at us then. Yeah. But now it's kind of gaining, I think, some momentum. And the idea is that no matter what, Visionary, if we're bought or whatever, you as the integrator or the customer are not dependent upon us for the continuity of the control system existing or your ability to access it.
So ultimately, this would mean that you could, for example, use NDI as an input and an output ingestion to your system that could actually control all the devices connected to your system through NDI as well?
Yeah, absolutely. You could use
as a protocol?
You could use NDI as a transport layer with an NDI system and control it via Node-RED. You could use SMPTE 2110, you could use Crestron, you could use QSys, Extron, us, anybody's system. As long as there's a published API or an API you can get, you could control it from Node-RED.
And would that control be able to be on-prem and in the cloud?
You could do it either way. Most times it's going to run on-prem, but you could theoretically run it in a cloud instance. One of the problems with that is a lot of the things in our industry rely on local multicast for discovery, MDNS, that kind of thing, Bonjour. So there's usually some on-prem element, but you could certainly have a cloud layer of managing above that. Another nice thing with the Node-RED is that AI knows everything about it. It's on GitHub. AI can download the code, read the code, and there's, I think now close to 1 million nodes on it. So it's a huge ecosystem, much larger than our industry.
Does that introduce any security issues? Is there, when you say something like that to me, immediately I think of, security holes that need to be patched, or, risks. How do you deal with those?
Actually, the risk is lower because there's so many more people trying to break into those systems and testing it. From IT, from hackers, from the open source community, that there's actually a lot more eyes on it, and a smaller system like most of the stuff in our industry just doesn't get that kind of testing or scrutiny.
So if I were an integrator and I were selling this to my end user, what are the top 3 advantages to the nexAV ecosystem?
Well, the first is that it's not owned, it's open source, so no one controls it, right? And no manufacturer can tell you, hey, you got to do this, or you know. Secondarily, scale. The number of people using and testing it and contributing to it is huge. And third is just the flexibility. It's entirely built around a web paradigm, so the HTML, the JavaScript, the CSS, you can build stuff just like regular web pages. And so you can now access a lot of people who know about that rather than just one specific system. Okay,
can I change gears and ask you a different question?
Sure.
IPMX, I mean, for years they've been talking about this as a standard for AV over IP. It got ratified a year and a half or 2 years ago as a standard for AV over IP. The broadcast industry is really pushing it, obviously, as a way to do AV over IP. Tell me where it fits into the global Pro AV market and what the value is for that. And are you looking at, for example, building a bridge to that, or how do you see IPMX? Is it something that we should even consider? I mean, it's coming from a different side of our industry than really the core, boardroom, meeting room, classroom kind of applications that we do.
Yeah, so I have two perspectives on it.
Okay.
One is sort of a farther out view, and one is just kind of personal for me.
Yeah.
So I think that the idea behind it is great. And so at Visionary, we were doing standards-based MPEG-2 transport stream H.264, 265 for a long time. And the challenge there is that even with standards, unless you have something like the broadcast industry where you're paying a lot of money, if you have sort of a very low-cost implementation, there can be challenges with, it's supposed to be interoperable, but it isn't always. And so there's that challenge. I think it could be really great. I think that they need to standardize on a compression for the compressed world. But the IPMX,
which is the whole Pro AV world, by the way.
To me, I find NMOS to be overly complicated. I think that the committees on there overdid it. I usually think that the IETF and the IP standards are way ahead of us on that kind of stuff. And DNS, really, which manages the whole internet, in my view, is a much better way of doing it. But I wasn't there. So I think that IPMX has great marketing, and I think that there are a lot of legitimate things in it for the end user. I would prefer something that was a little bit simpler on the implementation layer rather than the NMOS, and I think there are a lot of layers. But really, I do think that it would be great if we had a more interoperable environment.
So where do you think that's going to come from? How do you think we get there?
Well, unfortunately, at Visionary by ourselves, we don't have the scale to do something like that and make it happen. But I guess maybe the big volume guys are going to have to try and step in.
Open up there.
And maybe a Crestron needs to take leadership in that, or Acusis, or somebody. Either that, or we'll essentially get a filtered down, lower cost version of broadcast. Which, the SMPTE 2110 is great. I like it. Obviously, in our industry, we need a 1 gigabit or 2.5 solution just because the number of channels that we deal with. We have systems with 2,500 endpoints and like 800 encoders. So that's really hard to do if you've got a 25 gigabit.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know that anyone has enterprise-wide deployment of systems as large as some of the ones you have deployed.
Yeah, I mean, they're proprietary versus open. One of the challenges is how do you get the expertise that you need from someone like a Visionary, or who really invest in the support side. If there's a box that costs $200 that somebody's doing, how does that work? The economics of it are the real challenge. Like, how do you afford experts if you can buy one encoder from us and 1,000 decoders somewhere else? So there's just a lot of challenges. In broadcast, they solve it by only kind of having trusted names that they buy from that keep the price points higher.
5 or 6 big brands.
And so in our space, there's not that there. I'm very interested to see how it goes. I think at Visionary, we're getting closer and closer to customers. We don't ever go direct, but through integrators and end users, if we can create a value proposition where they understand that having subject matter experts is important, then I think that's important. But Ross is doing a great job, Riedel. There are a lot of great companies in this space that we respect, and I'm hoping that we can come to something where knowledge still carries a premium, but the end user is served. It's challenging.
Yeah, and the end user being served would be something in the level of interoperability. So
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, HDMI cables all work for people, right? And that's great. But what do you do for extension? And extension has always been a mix in our industry. But once again, the desire to have one point of contact and one person to blame when things go wrong, it's hard to go against that. Like, it's tough as an end user, right?
Yeah.
You have a super important thing you're trying to do, and it's got to go off. The CEO's right there. What are you doing if you're at Apple or Google or somebody? You can't have a failure.
Yeah.
And so, in some cases, that's harder to do, but the broadcast guys do it. The question is, can we translate it into a lower cost per node environment? And I don't know. Hopefully.
So your vision, say, 5 years from today, we're at InfoComm 5 years from today, it's 3031. Mm-hmm. What is InfoComm going to look like when it comes to signal routing and distribution?
Well, hopefully I'm watching it on TV retired somewhere, but other than that, I think that we'll hopefully have a much clearer vision of what's going to win for the end user. What are they going to want a proprietary section where maybe the on-prem final distribution is, and then there's a gateway, and then we move, so we have essentially a proprietary domain that is, managed by one party, and then we have a true interop out.
Isn't that what NDI is trying to do?
Yeah, I think so.
SH.265 theoretically is that too, right?
I tend to lean towards SMPTE 2110 myself because the NDI licensing requirements on my side are pretty
expensive
and pretty costly.
Yeah.
I think if NDI lowered their pricing, I think it would be a really attractive model.
Yeah. Well, when they were owned by Vizart, or VizRT, however you say it, that it was more likely to be cheap. But now that they're a separate entity, it's going to be more expensive.
Yeah,
because they're in the business of making money.
I'm not as up on that as I should be, truthfully. But I think that in the camera space, it's great.
Yeah.
I just I'm not sure how it translates.
Yeah.
But, and also, I think that they might, compared to JPEG XS or some of the other compression, they might have some work to do on that. But I can't say that for sure.
It's also not real time.
I'm not here to really, I'm not trying to tell customers what to do.
Yeah.
I think, check it out. But NDI has a lot of things going for it, as does SMPTE 2110.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I appreciate your honesty on this, and I like your vision. I like what you're doing with nexAV. I think it's a great idea, and I think it helps sort of simplify the whole thing, and it adds a level of confidence from the end user standpoint that you're looking at more than just what you do in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that it's really interesting to me. I sort of liken it to, right now, audio customers are developing their own workflows, although a lot of times it's cut and paste from before, but it's kind of like handing somebody a toolkit and saying, build an audio workflow. Whereas I see ours as more of a paint by numbers. On a little humorous aside, a friend of mine's dad invented paint by numbers. And so
really? That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. And anyway, it's I think that at the end, people need to get onto a job, solve the problem, and get off the job to get paid.
Yeah.
And integrators are always coming to me and saying, "Hey, can we make this simpler?" Always. They've never asked me once yet to make something more complicated.
That's a good way to end it.
Anyway, thank you.
No one's asking for something to be more complicated. All right. To learn more about Visionary Solutions, you can go to
visionary-av.com.
I always forget the dash. Visionary-av.com, and check it out. They've got some really cool stuff. And I've been to some installs that they've done. The NIH install is amazing that you guys did there. And that's a highly secure, and it's an install that has to be working all the time. So check it out, visionary-av.com. And of course, you can see all the videos we shot here at the booth at ravepubs.com/InfoComm. Just type in Visionary in the video search window. Thanks, Christoff.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Jordan. Appreciate you joining me. Thanks for
care.
watching.
Bye.